Hi, I'm Aranya, and I've been, familiar with the Lightlifetools for over 20 years now, and I'm making a few little videos here just to introduce the tools themselves and to answer some of your questions, which I get quite often. And the first one is, what is the difference between the different Cubit sizes? So we've got 3 different Cubit sizes here, and the Cubit is the basic measurement. So Slim originally was fascinated by the cubits that the ancient Egyptians used to build, for instance, the Giza pyramid. It's called the royal cubit or the sacred cubit. And so his initial experiments were on cutting wire to these different lengths, a sacred cubit, a half sacred cubit, playing with them, see if he could come up with things. And the whole story, which is a fascinating one, is available in Slim's books and so on, and also the videos. He talks a little bit about these things in the videos. But this is the sacred, no, that's not the sacred cubit. This is the sacred cubit over here. So the very basic ring is the half sacred cubit. So this is 20.6 inches is the cubit. So this is a half cubit rolled and brazed into a ring. So we have a half cubit, we have a full cubit. This is a 1.5 cubit. You see at this point they have beads on. So the rings, the basic rings, which are called plain Jane rings. It's a name that I guess Slim came up with, or somebody he knew. Plain, so it's just plain copper. That's all it is. It's copper wire wrapped around. And his initial rings, he would just go and get stuff from the scrapyard. I was fascinated by his garage workshop when I had the great privilege of going to see him in 2004. And it was a typical American garage. So if you're living in Britain, you're thinking a garage, it's much bigger than a normal garage. It's sort of an American double garage. But he'd gone to scrapyards, found all kinds of old tools, made his own tools. He was a blacksmith also by trade at one point. He taught blacksmithing at the blacksmithing school. And so metal was what he worked with. And so a lot of the original tools were just made with scrap that he got from scrapyards. So it's basic wire. And so each of these rings are just, wire is twisted. Important that it's twisted the correct way, because what the twisting does is it provides a field, the field that the ring generates. If you just use plain wire, you get, duality. You have a positive beneficial, we call it positive beneficial side to the ring, and you have a not beneficial side to the ring. And he learned quite quickly that this was a problem, because unless you could dowse and determine which side of the ring was the beneficial side, there was all kinds of problems that could happen there. So he discovered the twisting sort of folds the not so healthy aspect of the ring internally inside that twist there, and provides a positive beneficial effect on both sides of the ring. So these twisted rings are only beneficial, but if you make them yourself, you have to twist them the right way, because otherwise you create something that could be quite harmful, in that it supports degradation, the breaking down of things, which of course in nature is as important as the building. It's life builds and other life decomposes, and we need both of those. But if you're wanting something to help you and support you in your health, then you definitely don't want to be decomposed. So these are twisted wire, cut to length, made into sacred cubits. The lost cubit came a little bit later. This is work of Hans Becker, and so this was a mathematical thing. Discovered this. Slim started making them, trying them out, and also felt that they had benefit, but on a slightly, so rather than on the physical level, the sacred cubit seems to provide benefit on the physical level. The lost cubit seems to be more emotional, mental emotional kind of thing. As you see, if you put one inside the other, they're quite close, that you could almost describe them as being a bit like the Earth and the atmosphere of the Earth, although it's not that wouldn't be to scale at all because the atmosphere is really thin, but just get that sense of the lost Cubit's a little bit bigger. And because they're similar in size, particularly at this size, Slim started making them, the lost Cubits, with thicker wire. So if you look at these two side by side, you'll see that the lost Cubit is a much thicker gauge wire, and just makes it much easier. If you're looking, pick one up, you can quickly determine, oh, the sacred Cubit is thinner wire, that's a thicker wire, that's lost Cubit. So lost Cubits have their own size as well, so half, 1, 1.5. Again, as the rings get bigger, they start to get beads. I won't talk about beads in this video, that's for another video. And then beyond that, there's also a third Cubit, which was originally called the new Cubit. And so if you come across an article and it talks about the new Cubit, it's now known as the Empowerment Cubit. There we go. And you can see, well, it's a similar gauge, essentially the same kind of gauge wire as the lost Cubit, but it's bigger again. So if we put the lost Cubit inside the Empowerment Cubit, you can see the difference there. Another thing that's helpful in terms of determining is the Empowerment Cubits have a lot of beads on. So this has got 7 beads, that's 7 beads. So as far as I know, because I don't get to see every single tool that's made, but as far as I know, the Empowerment Cubit rings have 7 beads, and they also don't come as plain copper rings. They'll be plated, so these are gold plated. And of course the largest rings, so you can get 2 Cubit rings. So this is the 2 sacred Cubit. That's a gold plated one. Again, has beads. And then the very largest ones are the 3.5 Cubit. So these are very big. And of course, by the time you get to this size, this wire, I mean, it's okay, but it's very flexible. Whereas it's not so easy to flex that. But the same gauge wire at this size is much more flexible. Again, it has beads. The reason for the larger rings is you can just put more inside them. But obviously the larger rings have more metal, and particularly if they're plated, they have more gold or silver plating, which makes them more expensive. The lost Cubits are more expensive because it's a heavier gauge wire, but and if they're plated, again, they've got more plating on them. So the bigger they are, the more costly they are. And also, this is not really a very portable thing. So the 3.5 Cubit is a good size for just basically scanning the body. If you're working on the body or you want to sit in meditation inside a ring, then 3.5 is good for that. But it's not something you can put in your pocket like you can with a half Cubit. Even this size Empowerment Cubit, it's kind of would go in a pocket. It would be quite a big pocket, wouldn't it? And again, there is a 3.5 Cubit version of that, of the lost Cubit. All those tinkling beads, there they go. So yeah, and again, that's a little bit bigger because lost Cubit's slightly bigger, thicker gauge. And again, that gives it a little bit more strength. There is a 3.5 Cubit heavy gauge, which has a lot more copper in it. And these also, you don't get 3.5 Cubit rings with any kind of plating on, because Slim, he plated, or they still plate, in the workshop with electroplating in a crock pot. So anything that's too big to go in a crock pot ain't going to get plated. And so these come in copper versions with beads. They also have beads to help strengthen the feel. But yeah, as I say, beads are another video. And that's the basic differences. You have the sacred Cubit, which is more to do with working on the physical. You've got the lost Cubit, which is more to do with mental, emotional. And the Empowerment Cubit, well, I guess there's a kind of a clue in the name there. And so you choose the ring that suits what your purpose is, of course. And the more you want to put inside something, the bigger it needs to be. If you're trying to support a plant, for instance, then a 1 or 1.5 might be a better size to put over the plants. I've done that to revive plants. In fact, the plain copper ones, over time they will tarnish. But yeah, that's another video. We'll talk about that in another video. So there's your 3 different kinds of Cubit. They come in different sizes. The smaller ones are more portable, but you can do less with them because the active part of the ring is the bit in the middle. Can't get quite so much. It can go on a wrist, but and around a cup of tea or water or something. But bigger things need bigger rings. Yeah.